Welcome to another edition of Beyond the Box Score. I'm Treyvon Hastings. With me is my co-host Joey Kurzanowski. We just got into a little bit of rambling about the demise of my Detroit Tigers, currently down 8-1 and ruining your bet slip. And then we've got we were talking a little bit about the QB run game. It's gonna be a topic as the Browns have officially started this Dylan Gabriel era. They have traded Joe Flacco to a division rival, the Cincinnati Bengals. Shout out to Joe Flacco. I don't know if there's ever been a player in the history of the NFL to play for three of the four AFC North teams. It's a little wicked, to be honest. So it'll be weird seeing Flacco. It was weird seeing Flacco in a Browns jersey.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be even weirder seeing him in a Bengals jersey. Obviously, gonna pose this to get your thoughts on the whole trade, getting a fifth round pick as well. I think that was a huge win for the Browns for getting off a quarterback they frankly want no business with anymore.
Yeah, they clearly had no need for Joe Flacco anymore. And I mean, I know there's some people had tossed around the idea of maybe if Dylan Gabriel doesn't live up to expectations, you could go back to Flacco. But at that point, I think you're just doing more detriment than anything. So that was never really going to happen. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, getting a fifth round pick for him, I think is more than a steal. But I said this earlier. This move just reeks of desperation by the Bengals, and like I understand it. Their team is too good for them to just tank it out with Jake Browning. So that you kind of have to make a move. But I question the fit because the last we saw of Joe Flacco, he was turnover prone, which is what the issue was with Jake Browning, and he was just immobile, which we know is a problem behind this Bengals offensive line. And the reason that Joe Burrow has gotten hurt is because he's had to run too much. So I don't know. Maybe Joe Flacco can, get the ball out quick, and maybe Zach Taylor can scheme up a good game plan. I mean, obviously he's going from a huge upgrade from the Browns receivers, which are arguably the worst in the league, to arguably the best wide receiver room in the league with Higgins and Chase. So it's interesting to see how this is going to go because, like I said, on one hand, it's a struggling offensive line, but you are throwing to some phenomenal receivers.
100%. And when the trade first went down, you know, we communicate with a lot of similar fans, so we know a lot of Browns. I don't know a lot of Eagles fans, but I happen to associate myself, being in Ohio, with a lot of Ohioan fan bases. So, yeah, it was very much, I think the Browns fan base was happy to have received what they did for Flacco, knowing they've already moved on from him, basically. And on the Bengals side of things, it was very shocking, to say the least, that out of all the quarterback options that they had to potentially go with, the Kirk Cousins of the world, who is expensive, but Jameis Winston looming out there. Plenty of options, in my opinion, from a backup perspective. Um, and they elected to go with probably the cheapest one, which still cost them a fifth round pick. I think I would just rather play Jake Browning and keep the fifth because I don't think the level of production from Flacco to Browning is going to be that much better. In terms of IQ and understanding the game and the defense, like Flacco's definitely got an upper hand on Browning, but he's at the age where Browning, honestly, he's a better athlete. He's probably got a better arm at this point as well. And it seems like they're just going to a all reliable mindset with Flacco. So we'll see what happens with the Bengals. I think they waited 2 weeks too late, personally, because they've dropped two games in pretty convincing fashion. Zach Taylor's not going to demote himself from play calling, which I disagree with due to the fact that they have had they've had the worst first half offense in the league since Joe Burrow's been out. So questions continue to arise in Cincinnati, but that probably means a little bit more of reassurance for Browns fans on the future of their team. Also, a reminder, I know Browns fans don't like this guy, but Deshaun Watson does have an estimated return of October 12th. So we'll see if he were to somehow, rise up from the depths of death and play for the Browns this year. But my understanding was he wouldn't play all year. But that might change.
Yeah, so from my understanding, I believe the Browns have a 21-day window starting on that October 12th date that you mentioned for him to kind of it'll just kind of be there. I don't know if they have to make like a specific move or anything. They do have Bailey Zappi on the practice squad, so I'll be interested to see what they do there. Honestly, the big talk today in Cleveland media has been about the QB2 spot. Obviously, the Browns like what they saw, or at least they feel like they saw enough from Dylan Gabriel this weekend. Know that they feel comfortable enough to move forward with him as the solidified quarterback one. But now you've got Shadur Sanders, and I can promise you, a lot of people in Cleveland want to see Shadur Sanders play. So even just having him at quarterback too, I think puts a huge spotlight on Dylan Gabriel. Every throw he makes is going to be under a microscope. But there was some talk of do they move Bailey Zappi to quarterback too right now, because the Browns have came out and said that if and when Shadur Sanders plays, they want to make sure that he is fully prepared. They want to give him a full week of preparation. They don't want like a Dorian Thompson Robinson situation, right, where he's starting Sunday morning and he just now finds out he's totally unprepared, and then it shows. So all signs right now are pointing towards Shadur Sanders being QB2. But yeah, you are right. This might mean Deshaun Watson will be QB3 when he comes back. There has been some talk of maybe he'll play this year. I would imagine fans would riot if that was the case. I cannot imagine that going well at all.
Yeah, friend of ours had proposed, Gabriel playing for a little bit until Watson comes back. He can play weeks like 8 through 15, and then you could get the door once the season's over, weeks 15 through 18. Now, the concept, personally, I don't like Russian roulette at quarterback, but unfortunately for the Browns, they've kind of been playing Russian roulette since we both were born. So, the Browns will probably see 3 or 4 players at quarterback, but a team who won't. Uh, Picking up a big win yesterday. I always talk bad about the always overrated Trevor Lawrence, but I have to give him some props here. Rare coming out of, my mouth. I actually despise Trevor Lawrence for frankly no reason. I just think he's an overrated quarterback. But man, what a game-winning drive he led against the Chiefs. A big game at home. Jacksonville 4-1 for the first time since 2007. I want to hear your thoughts on this Jacksonville team, and are they legit?
I think yes. Look, this defense is playing really, really well. I'm very impressed with Liam Cohen. Obviously, I think he's seriously in that conversation for Coach of the Year in his first year with the Jaguars. Because let's be honest, that Coach of the Year award has kind of turned into best new coming Coach of the Year. But nonetheless, he's certainly in that conversation. And I understand where you're at with Trevor Lawrence. He kind of feels like the Drew Aller of the NFL, right? Like he has all the tools. He has all the pieces. You just haven't seen him fully put it together. And I honestly felt like last night he kind of did. He made a ton of plays with his legs. He showed great toughness. He never wavered. I mean, the Jags were down 14-0 at one point, and he wasn't phased. The one interception he had, I think, was definitely should have been called PI. It wasn't. But yeah, that last drive, he had that phenomenal throw to Brian Thomas Jr. down the sideline, and then the play at the goal line. He falls down, gets back up, and somehow still finds a way to make the play. So, yeah, I was thoroughly impressed with Trevor Lawrence. But this Jaguars defense, I think, is the real story. Going into that game, a lot of people had said that they liked the Chiefs to win because they didn't think the Jaguars would keep up this high turnover margin. But they had that 99-yard pick six by Devin Lloyd. One of the best plays I've seen yet this year.
Yeah, and for Devin Lloyd, that's actually 4 picks in 5 games. So he's playing a heck of a season in pass coverage as a linebacker. Um, there's not a lot of linebackers with that ability. The Eagles rookie Jahad Campbell has he's been graded as the top 7 linebackers so far in pass coverage, behind players such as Devin Lloyd. So there's not a lot of guys who, as a linebacker, can excel at both at an elite level. And frankly, Devin Lloyd has entered. He's starting to enter a tier that I don't think people expected him to potentially enter. Some people did, like myself, but not like this. He's been doing an exceptional job. That interception that you mentioned was a it was it came straight out of Madden. It was mid blitz. They
Yeah.
showed a double A mug mid blitz. Lloyd and the other linebacker alongside him, I believe it was Olu Kuhn at that point, but they both dropped back into coverage. They actually basically pulled a bait and switch on Mahomes, and it worked surprisingly. So they got a huge interception at inside the 5 that kind of flipped that game and kept Jacksonville in it. So um, I think Jacksonville definitely will be a playoff team. The AFC North is frankly decimated with injuries. I mean, it'll probably be a one playoff participating team division this year. The Texans are, I don't know what they are. They had a big win against the Ravens, but Also,
The Ravens backups. Let's be honest, though.
yeah, the
I hate to say that because I hate to take away what the Texans did, but
Yeah, the Ravens' entire core was injured, so I don't really know what to think about that win. Obviously, it was good handling business for them, protecting CJ
absolutely.
once, but um, I like Jacksonville and Indianapolis to be the two teams coming out of that division and playing in the playoffs. I think both those teams can do that. I think they honestly will do that because of Lamar Jackson's out another 2-3 weeks. Baltimore is probably going to drop all those games. Um, Another team who has emerged as a potential sneaky dark horse team in the AFC is someone who I don't think is overrated. Someone I actually really admire as a head coach, Mike Vrabel and his New England Patriots. Big win on the road in Buffalo. Drake May played a heck of a game despite having no touchdowns, and the wild, wild west of Ramondre Stevenson pulled through with two big touchdowns despite 7 carries for 14 yards and a fumble.
Yeah, it was a really impressive win by the Patriots. A lot of people were high on this team going into this year. They spent a ton in free agency. Obviously, hiring Mike Vrabel, everybody loved that hire, and I think it's paying dividends. And they had a bit of a slow start to the year, but this really felt like one of those wins that really just kind of galvanizes the team, and this kind of propels you forward. Kind of conversely, you think about the Cardinals. They had that bad loss to the Titans. That's one of those losses that can kind of derail your season. This feels like one of those wins that does the exact opposite. They got Stephon Diggs going all game. I mean, granted, he had the revenge game factor, and that was awesome to see for Stephon Diggs. But yeah, I think the Patriots are certainly going to be a team to be reckoned with. I don't know if they'll win the division, obviously behind the Bills, but they could be on the Bills' heels kind of throughout the year, especially if Drake May is going to play the way he did.
Yeah, and speaking on the Bills thing, and the Patriots thing, the Patriots have a very easy first 8 games of the season. I envisioned them honestly being 5-3 or 6-2 at that point, depending on the play of their roster. And despite the run game not coming into fruition the way we thought it would with Treyvon Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson, they've gotten pretty good production from May in the passing game. Kind of upset they wanted to start throwing Stephon Diggs the ball after I traded him in fantasy, but but despite that, um, big win for the Bills, for the Patriots, excuse me, against the Bills. Their defense finally kind of had a like sustainable game. Their defense has struggled a little bit despite all the signings, but under the leadership of Mike Vrabel, I like where the direction of the Patriots is heading. We can say the exact opposite for North Carolina and Bill Belichick. Not gonna even talk about that. I'm just it flows, but yeah, they played a heck of a game, as did Jacksonville. So two rising AFC teams, and what's been a pretty surprising start, I think, for both, especially Jacksonville. You had mentioned the Cardinals. I want to shout out the Cardinals for ruining one of my locks of last week with the -7.5. That honestly was free. They played.
It looked good for 3 quarters.
Yes, and then Demarcado would have put them up 28-12. I don't know why players still continue to do this with the football. They let it loose before they cross the pylon. I don't understand it. I've never understood it, and I never will. So he cost them a touchdown. The game still should have been won by Arizona by at least 9 because Cam Ward throws a pick, and in the most Cardinal, just Three Stooges way possible, they fumble the ball. Defender somersaults down, obviously wasn't touched, so he's still a live player. Ball is still live. He fumbles it, and somehow, some way, despite 6 Cardinals being in the area, they all played whack-a-mole with the football, could not pick it up, and it eventually made its way backwards into the end zone for Tennessee and a touchdown. So it really flipped the game. The Cardinals had a fumble via snap to Kyler Murray's head as well. He didn't even try to pick up the ball. He didn't know what to do, apparently. It was very reminiscent of Cam Newton in the Super Bowl against the Broncos. A lot of weird things going on in Arizona. On top of the fine Jonathan Gannon just got by the team, which was $100,000 for his interaction with DeMarcado during that game. So they're in a little bit of a cluster mess. I'll keep it PG, but a very, very much a cluster there.
Well, I really wouldn't be surprised if their season kind of derails from here because remember 2 weeks ago they lost on a game-winning field goal to the Seahawks, a game that was really winnable. They had a nice second half, and then the Seahawks come back and they steal a game in Arizona. So that's not really two back to back, really tough losses, and kind of like we saw with Penn State. You know, they had that tough loss to Oregon. It just kind of feels like these losses are going to stack up. They just emotionally defeat a team. They just take so much out of you. You feel like you almost like you feel like the season's lost, honestly, because you gave up two games that you very easily could have won. And I'm give you a little sneak peek here. The Colts are -6.5 this week, hosting Arizona. Yeah, that will be one of my locks of the week. Look, I just think it's a terrible matchup there for Arizona. I mean, you had those two bad losses. You're not going to go across the country to a red hot Colts team. I mean, you want to talk about sleeper teams, teams we didn't expect to do this at the beginning of the year. The Colts are right there. So I think it's a terrible matchup for the Cardinals, and I would not be surprised if things just start kind of sputtering out of control. But to your point about Jonathan Gannon, a lot of people were well. I thought some people would be upset about it, but honestly, I think a lot of people weren't, at least from what I've seen just in comment sections and kind of the talk on social media. A lot of people said, you know, if you had a problem with that, you've never played football before, you've never played sports before, because look, I mean, jobs are on the line here. That play essentially cost them the game. That fumble essentially allowed the Titans to come back. And Jonathan Gannon was heated. DeMercado knows he messed up. Jonathan Gannon hit him on the shoulder pads, and everyone's acting like he punched him in the face. Hit him in the shoulder pads, and they moved on like grown men. So he took a hefty fine, though. I believe 100K. So that's a little steep, but yeah, no, things are looking gloomy out in Arizona.
I'm 100% in full agreement here on the uh, mediocrity that is the Arizona Cardinals on a yearly basis. I try to think highly of them. I try to like Kyler as a quarterback. I unfortunately think they've kind of reached their ceiling with him,
Mm-hmm.
and they might need to consider moving on from him. It sounds somewhat outlandish to say, but there's better options for them in terms of a ceiling if they potentially pursue other options via the draft or free agency moving forward. So they are a mess. I don't know if they're as big of a mess as Penn State is, though. And they had a big loss, a very surprising one. Definitely, in my opinion, the most surprising one of the college football season against UCLA, who looked awful the first 4 weeks. Coach was already fired as a first year head coach as well. And I mean, yeah, it was a mess. They literally lost to an analyst. Shout out to a big win there. They basically don't have a head coach, OC, or DC right now, and they still managed to get a big win. Nico Iamaliva, as I like to say his last name, he had a huge performance. 128 yards on the ground, 16 carries, 3 touchdowns rushing, and a relatively efficient day passing despite the lack of yardage. So that was the best he's played in some time now, frankly, probably since that Ohio State game. But it's more so a testament of the lack of um, elite that Penn State should be, because they should be a team that is a national contender with the amount of talent they have, the skill players that they have in the backfield, as well as their quarterback, and obviously that stud defense. And this was a point I saw on Twitter about Penn State, but um, Sonny Styles talked recently about how it is having Matt Patricia as the DC at Ohio State, and this is very similar to what happened in Ohio State's first year with Jim Knowles. It's a very concept defensive philosophy and scheme, and it usually takes over a year. It probably takes more than like 2 years to actually understand the Jim Knowles defense. So Penn State's kind of going through a little bit of that, I think, right now, and it's gonna potentially derail their season and end what has been a pretty not necessarily fraudulent, but very disappointing James Franklin tenure at the university.
Yeah, I would be really surprised if they kept him after this year. The only thing is his buyout is like $56 million. So I mean, Penn State's gonna have to fork over a nice chunk of change if they want to move on from him. But it's honestly just disappointing. And look, I was bought in on Penn State at the beginning of the year. I really thought this was the year. I thought they were gonna have kind of an Ohio State year. Like last year, Ohio State, look, they brought everybody back to gear up for one big national title run. I thought that was Penn State this year. And you just kind of felt like through those first couple of weeks that you were like, they don't look convincing. They didn't pass the eye test, right, against a lesser competition. And so that loss against Oregon really shouldn't have been all that surprising. And then this one, I think, was just the icing on the cake. I mean, but like you said about the Cardinals, I think that Oregon loss just completely took so much out of them. Because you think about it, all year they're saying, all right, we got these couple of easy games before we get to Oregon. It's going to be a whiteout at home. Look, this is our chance to prove it, and you just fall flat. It's just deflating at home. Everything that went into it, I think, just really took everything out of Penn State, and I think it showed having to travel across the country. By the way, those Big Ten cross country games have proven to be tough. I know Washington kind of escaped Maryland with a win, but they were down like 20 points in the fourth quarter. So those cross country games have been tough on teams. So you add all of that up, and it's been really disappointing for Penn State. I had high hopes for Drew Aller, and just the team in general, but yeah, Penn State's going to need to shake some things up, whether that's in recruiting. Maybe they actually try and recruit some big time receivers or something. But yeah, it's really sad to see with James Franklin because I try to root for James Franklin. I try to root for Penn State. I like how he's built up the program. He's brought him up from the bottom, but now you're at the top, and then it's like, now what? You just can't get over the hump.
Yeah, and adding on to that cross country thing, um, Oregon traveled to Northwestern, and despite it being a one-sided game, it wasn't an easy game for Oregon. They got off to a slow start.
Hmm.
They'd covered that spread that they had at that time. That was 23, 24. It was 27 and a half. They ended up winning. It would have been a win by 27. Then they gave up a late touchdown, so they actually didn't even cover against Northwestern. Yeah, but the bottom teams of the Big Ten have proven to be a little bit more competitive this year than one would realize. Wisconsin played a tough game against Michigan despite losing by 2 scores. They were in that game for about 2.5 quarters. Purdue has been able to revive their offense a little bit the last few weeks with Barry Odom now, and I think he's going to get that program back into the competitive, 7 to 9 win territory. We'll see where he takes them, but adding on to the Penn State thing, yeah, I mean, James, it's going to be either be a Jimbo Fisher situation where he gets a massive buyout just to not be here, or it's going to be we're kind of stuck with him. He has a really large buyout, and he's just going to be here. So I don't mean to compare James Franklin to Dabo in this situation, but it kind of is Dabo like where you have become accustomed to seeing Dabo with Clemson, James Franklin with Penn State, and unfortunately, they're going to have two of the biggest buyouts for coaches in college football history, and that makes you less incentivized to move on from them. So we'll see what happens with those two situations, but I don't think it's going to be a lot of positive. And I know the fan bases are definitely upset, as they should be, but
Hmm.
while those two teams have been crumbling, talking about the Cardinals and Penn State, the is the U back? Because as much I love to hate Miami just for the sake of Miami, but they have proven so far that they might be legit, and it's with the improvements on the defensive side of the ball more than it has anything to do with offense. Because last year they had probably the best offense in the country, and they had a couple games where they just completely flatlined and lost because of their defense. So I want to get your thoughts on the U because with this defense and the improvements they've had on that side of the ball, a veteran like Carson Beck manning the ship offensively, I think the U might be back.
Yeah, absolutely. They've been awfully impressive, and like you said, that defense has really been the key. But I mentioned how I thought Penn State, this year would kind of have an Ohio State type of year, where you bring everybody back and you gear for one national title run. But I think Miami is a little more built like that when you think about it. You bring a lot of guys back. You're built on defense, and then you go out in the transfer portal and you get a veteran senior quarterback to kind of put it all together. I know they had Cam Ward, but they didn't really have the defense to go along with it. But yeah, Carson Beck is playing. He's playing really good football. I think Miami is certainly going to be in the mix come playoff time for the national championship. Right now, I mean the clear favorites for the ACC. I know a lot of people thought it'd be Clemson, but Florida State might have shown some promise. But yeah, I think Miami's going to run away with the ACC, and then I think the clear cut and dry top three teams right now in the country are Ohio State, Oregon, Miami. I think you have to have Ohio State number one, and then you can flip Oregon, Miami, however you want. But Yeah, I've loved what I see out of Miami. I definitely think they are back.
Yeah, I 100% agree on this. It's been an interesting college football season. We thought Texas was going to be this juggernaut, kind of like how we're talking about, the all in for a national championship. They've continued to progress just incrementally, exponentially towards a national championship in terms of reaching the college football playoffs, winning a game in the college football playoffs, winning two, so on and so forth. But Texas has kind of fallen off. Clemson's definitely fallen off. Penn State isn't what they should be at this present moment in time. So the AP preseason top four, you have an undefeated Ohio State team, and then those other three teams, all with multiple losses. So this is why I don't believe in a preseason AP poll because frankly they misjudge. And that's how the so-called SEC bias or Big Ten bias or whatever you want to call it bias, brand bias, um, that's how it starts, is how the teams initially get ranked to begin the year. So I would be for just not ranking anybody and waiting a week and then going from there because I think it makes more sense. Um, but that's just me. There's been a lot of interesting conversation around the AP poll and its lack of intelligence at times. And I think this is a clear indication of why we don't do a preseason AP poll
Mhm.
because it's just been a mess, frankly. And college football lately, in the expanded CFP era, even more than the regular CFP era, it has become quite chaotic. Teams know they're in it until the last few weeks of the season, and I think it's been I think it's been a good thing for college football that they have had this expanded playoff. And I know there's proposals out there to increase it to 14 teams, 16 teams. I would have liked it to go to eight first and then
Mhm.
go from there. But despite that, it is what it is. They could have even done the NFL wildcard expansion with seven teams. Best team gets a bye. Like it all. I think those would make more sense first. But I've always been a fan of the Harbaugh proposal and what he wanted the playoff to look like. I think it was eight teams. Um, his idea made sense as well. But it's not going to matter in 15 years when the Big Ten and SEC break off because that's it's continuing to just signal that the way things are trending. So we'll see. Maybe Penn State can still make the playoff. I don't know what that's going to look like at this point. Um,
They're
Obviously,
they're going to need a win over Ohio State. That's probably the only thing that's going to save them at this point. And right now, is anybody taking Penn State over Ohio State? I'm for damn sure not. I don't think anybody on earth would do that right now.
yeah, and that game's also in Columbus. Those two
Yeah,
teams usually play one score tight games, so
yeah.
they'll probably be in the game. But I think it's going to be one of those weird, kind of like Ohio State feels like they're in control. Penn State's going to have their opportunities. Probably not going to convert. So, similar to last year's game when those two teams played, and Penn State couldn't score at the goal line four times. So, um, who knows with Penn State? Who knows with the Cardinals and all of those situations? But a bright side in college football is that Miami is back. Ole Miss looks like a very legit team finally. We thought this would be them last year, but it looks like it's going to be this year. They've had the whole QB thing. Um, we thought for a minute LSU there. I never thought LSU, despite beating Clemson, was legit, but their offense has been frankly terrible. And the coolest thing about this year so far, we have no sort of indication on who the Heisman frontrunner is because it's been that wide open.
Yeah, I honestly going into the year, I had some hope for maybe Jeremiah Smith, just because there was, I mean, obviously Drew Aller was there, but in past years he hasn't put up the numbers that are really worthy of being Heisman. So I've seen a lot of Ohio State fans saying both Julian Sayin and Jeremiah Smith should be in the conversation, but no, I mean the thing with that is right now I just neither of their numbers really stick out to you. So I do think it is really interesting that there is no clear front runner. I think it's going to make for a great end of the year, but a lot of people like throwing out Dante Moore, maybe Fernando Mendoza. I think you're just gonna kind of have to wait for one of those guys to have really a signature performance, and maybe for Julian saying that's against a team like Penn State or Michigan, maybe who knows. But the way Julian Saints playing right now has been really nice. I honestly I think for both Ohio State and Texas, I would have liked to see that game played about now. kind of after both quarterbacks have settled in a little bit. Because even though Texas has, obviously they're unranked, but Arch Manning, I would say, has looked better from week one. I know going against Ohio State's defense is never an easy task, but yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting coming down the stretch here. I mean, I personally really have no indication on who's going to win it. I would, as an Ohio State fan, I would probably lean towards one of those guys, but if they're both kind of getting the recognition, then neither of them is really going to end up with the first place votes.
Yeah, and it could be it could be like that situation with Alabama when Mac Jones, Devontae Smith, like they had three Heisman finalists.
Yeah.
They were able to get a winner, but when three of the four are Alabama, I mean your odds are pretty good. So that was the year with I think Najee Harris, Mac Jones, and Devontae Smith. So they had a
Hmm.
pretty tandem in general. But um, on the Heisman thing, I want to shout out UTSA's running back, Robert Henry Jr. He is averaging like 180 yards a game. Pre last week, I need to do some fact checking there, but for context, Ashton Genty averaged 198 yards per game last year. So very similar trajectory. I think the way things are going with the expansion as well and getting the auto bid for a mid major, I think it would be awesome. I shouldn't even say mid major. I should say G5 technically, but not really the point. Um, I think we're gonna get more of those lower tier, high level players who are gonna get recognition because of the whole auto bid thing. Like we were talking about Ohio being a potential team to monitor for the playoff, but as we know, the MAC is chaotic, and Ohio lost this week to Ball State. And I frankly liked Ball State's spread. I didn't put it as a lock. It was like 21 and a half playing a MAC game at home against Ohio. That's way too many points. And Ball State
Yeah.
has 40 seconds left. So if there's anything anybody should know, do not bet money lines in MAC games and do not take the big spreads for the favorite in MAC games. Always favor the underdog if it's like 8.5, 11.5, 14.5, because those games are always close. That's the one thing I love about the MAC. So,
Well,
uh,
especially home teams, because a couple of weeks ago I went to Buffalo, Kent State, and I honestly I thought Buffalo was going to blow out Kent State. They were like 23.5 point favorites or something, and it looked like Kent State was going to win for a minute. Buffalo barely won. I don't remember if it went to overtime, but I know Buffalo had won by like one score at the end. So yeah, you're absolutely right. These MAC games, these MAC teams, they kind of beat up on each other.
yeah, and Buffalo ended up winning 31-28 in regulation. Akron had
Yeah.
a week against Central. So it feels like the bottom of the MAC is starting to reemerge as we can win a few games. Not, yeah, we're 0 and 10, 0 and 12, whatever it is. The worst team is by far UMass, but that is what it is. They will lose some juice when Northern Illinois goes to the Mountain West. Still a weird fit, but they'll be going
Yeah.
to the West for football. But they're going to stay in the MAC otherwise. So clearly that's a money move for Northern Illinois. Um, and we'll get more of that expansion, realignment, and all those things. Honestly, next year when half of the Mountain West is going to be Pac-12 teams, and we have to figure out the whole Pac-12 thing. Are they going to be a Power Five? Is it going to be a mid-major? I'm going to assume it's going to be a G5 for now, but I wouldn't be against it being a Power Five, although it would be a very lackluster Power Five at that. So I'm not sure for the Heisman thing. This is a little bit of a preview for this game, but Oregon and Indiana are going to play each other this week, and it is going to be a cross-country travel trip for Indiana as they're going to go to Oregon, and both those quarterbacks are going to have a chance to put their stamp on potentially the Heisman, Big Ten Player of the Year, all those things. So this is a game I want to take a moment to highlight because this is one of the few matchups ever where there's been two coaches with a win percentage higher than 70% or higher. Dan Lanning, 40 and I think 6 as a head coach. Kurt Cignetti, 35 and 6. So it's a very historic coaching matchup from that perspective.
Yeah, and I kind of look at this as Kurt Cignetti is in Dan Lanning's spot a couple of weeks ago, right? Dan Lanning was looking to get his really first, big time signature win. I know he beat Ohio State last year at home, and that was, absolutely a huge win at the time. But, Dan Lanning was looking for kind of that win to put Oregon, in the upper echelon of teams in the country, and he got that at Penn State. And now I feel like Kurt Cignetti is kind of looking for the same thing, right? Uh, just a couple of weeks ago, Kurt Cignetti in Indiana, they absolutely boat raced Illinois at home, and it was certainly an impressive win. But if Kurt Cignetti can go across the country, can beat what is, we just said, a top three team in the country, I think you seriously have to take Indiana into consideration when you're talking about national championship teams.
100%. I am curious what the spread is on this game.
I
Um,
want I want to say 7.5. I feel like I saw it earlier. I want to say 7.5, which is
I was gonna,
kind of a lot of points.
yeah, I was gonna guess 7.5. Um, it's so hard to get a read on Indiana because, like with last season, their signature win was basically 8-5 Michigan.
Yeah,
Doesn't really say much. They didn't obviously play in the Big Ten championship game because they lost to Ohio State pretty convincingly. However, the clear gap between Indiana being great or good and the rest of the teams they had played, and then obviously the elite tier being Ohio State, it was very evident. Obviously, Indiana doesn't have quite as easy of a schedule this year, close but not quite. Um, so this is going to be their litmus test. This is going to be a game that potentially determines if they're going to get put in the college football playoff again. There's a lot of unknowns with the playoff right now and the teams that are in there because we've got teams like Texas Tech, who I'm very high on. I like Texas Tech,
yeah.
but the problem is getting through the Big 12 unscathed because that tends to be like the MAC, a very chaotic conference. So if Texas Tech can get through the Big 12 with one, maybe two losses and win the Big 12 championship game, which I think is much higher than it would have been preseason, just due to the fact that Kansas State has no clear just identity because Avery Johnson can't throw a football.
Just too
Iowa State,
inconsistent.
yeah, Iowa State's been all over the place as well. So the Big 12 is solely Texas Tech's to take, and if they do
until they,
that,
until they run into Cincinnati,
yeah, they're listen.
but most
I'm
underrated team in the country.
That was the lock of the week that Joseph here got right. You did not get the cow one right.
I did not know that was.
They actually got boat raced by Duke.
I was
But
thoroughly disappointed. They got off to a good start. I actually fell asleep during that game. I woke up and they lost by like 3 touchdowns. I don't even want to know what happened. But
yeah, for context, Cincinnati money line was not going to be on the graphic, and then I had a change by Joey to take to UCF plus 3.5 off, which they almost covered. They
did
actually
not
had
though. Got
the
stuffed
game.
at the goal line three
They had
times.
the line, and they ended up losing by 7, so double the 3.5. But yeah, it was as Future would say, sensational. It was a sensational block of the week. I thought I had a good slate as well once again, but the Cardinals happened. I have to even remember what else I put on there, but this that Cardinals thing just sitting in my brain like, wow, oh, Giants money line. That's a whole nother thing as well. The Giants, man, get a big win against one of the NFL's better teams, and then you completely. It was a clear trap game, like fall back down game that tends to happen.
Yeah,
I look at it that way because apparently Kellen Moore has the Saints offense looking somewhat competent. So yeah, those are
Spencer Rattler is playing good.
he is playing good. He's not throwing a lot of touchdowns, but he's also not
No.
he's barely turned the ball over at all. If they could get the run game going with Alvin Kamara, they might actually have some potential there
Hmm.
in the weak division, but probably won't happen. Um, the other thing I for sure wanted to uh, touch base on was it's going to be a combination of MLB preview, MLB recap because, well, as I had highlighted, Tigers got mollywopped. Okay, tonight, 8-1. I want to shout out
They
Jack.
put up a couple of runs in the ninth. It was 8-4. I
My
think it
bad.
ended 8-4
Okay, 8-4. Wow.
until the
So,
Mariners started trying
made it
again and
look
put in.
competitive. The score in my mind is 8-1. So
Yeah,
I want to congratulate Jack Flaherty for once again completely just you know throwing in the towel. Just somehow finding a way to give up 3 runs and not even 4 innings, um, 3 walks. I mean, the guy's been frustrating to watch all season, and it's been frankly quite confusing. Um, Originally, I thought it was going to be Casey Mize starting because in the last series against the Guards, it was Scooble, Mize, Flaherty, but they decided to flip Mize and Flaherty. So now, congrats to Casey Mize. You have to pitch the game of your life to extend this to a game five to get Mr. Scooble on the mound once again. So I don't like the Tigers' chances, frankly, because the Mariners have a across the board top three offense on the
Mhm.
road, and they have a bottom 10 offense when they're at home because their park tends to be very, very pitcher friendly, which would be a benefit once again to Scooble in Game Five if that happens. But the Mariners have too many guys to be shut down for 5 games, 4 games, 3 games. They were gonna eventually score runs, and that's kind of that. But on the other side of it, the Blue Jays, I believe, won again tonight, which means they will upset
Uh,
the New York Yankees.
Actually, no, they're down eight to
They're now
six
down. Okay, it
in the
was
bottom of
six.
the sixth. The Yankees went stupid. Aaron Judge hit a home run off the foul pole. I
Yeah,
think it was three. I think it was a 3-run shot to tie it up. I'm watching it right now. Yeah, Shane Bieber pitched fine to start the game, and then they brought out the bullpen, and then Louis Varland. I
yeah,
remember him I remember him,
from
when
the
he was on the
Twins.
Twins. He was not good. I used to fade him all the time. And yeah, but so the Yankees have kind of woke up, but I don't know. I you cannot trust this Yankees pitching staff. Carlos Rodon got shelled. It's only a matter of time until Luke Weaver comes in. I'm sure the Blue Jays will tie it up. But yeah, this makes for a great series, though. It's definitely some great baseball.
Yeah, it was trending until the Blue Jays' epic failure of a sweep here, to be 3 sweeps, and then the Tigers Mariners series because the Brewers have absolutely dominated the Cubs. And the Cubs got off similarly to the Tigers. That great start kind of fell off a little bit. The Brewers have been easily the best team in baseball for almost 2 months now. They've been extremely hot. So many weapons they can go to in that lineup. The pitching,
Yeah,
very underrated pitching staff. I will say Quinn Priester's had a redemption year. Freddie Peralta,
yeah.
I've always liked. He's got a lot of strikeout stuff, and then their bullpen has been frankly phenomenal. Similarly to the Mariners, and I think their bullpen gets slept on in part because of how good their pitching staff is. I mean, any team with Logan Gilbert and Kirby and Castillo, you're going to be a very good team. Typically, Bryce Miller as well. He has struggled this year with injuries, but they have a very strong, and Brian Wu as well, who's actually not on the ALDS roster. So they
Which is
have a
very surprising because he was one of their more reliable arms throughout the year. He throws a ton of strikes.
yeah, and he was dealing with some sort of injury. They elected to keep him off of the roster. It made me very happy because I already know he's going to shell the Tigers. Um, those are two of the more slept on teams, and they've had 2 very good seasons. The Blue Jays, although those 2 teams have been slept on, I think the Blue Jays have been the one that have flown the most under the radar. They've had statistically all season for the most part 6 batters in that 290 to 300 plus range or 280 to 300 plus range. They've been very good at making contact, getting base hits, and the Yankees have obviously struggled with that. And despite somehow allowing 6 runs, the Yankees are going to find a way to win this game because the Blue Jays have a very questionable bullpen, to say the least. So that is their weakness for sure. I'd still like them to win the series. It has more to do with their offensive firepower that they have found after the slow start. And it's going to probably propel them to a ALCS appearance. I mean, we'll see. I don't think the Blue Jays are going to blow 3 games in a row. As for the
No, I'd be shocked.
yeah, the Mariners Blue Jays would be an electric matchup because of all the uh, offensive firepower on both teams, the
Yeah,
combination of the quality pitching staffs. Blue Jays aren't as good as the Mariners, but I mean, having Barrios, Bassett, Gosman, Bieber, it's a very quality four as well. Eric Lawler's pitched a little bit for them as a starter, kind of as a spot guy as well. He's had a pretty good season, so um, it'll be interesting. I think the Tigers, obviously, if they can find life, can still get out of this thing, make a run in the ALCS, and maybe we'll see the Tigers in the World Series. I don't like their chances, but they should have everything at their disposal too. They've had 2 players this year, 30 or more home runs. Another one with Kerry Carpenter at about 25 would have been 30 if he didn't get hurt. So it is what it is. The Tigers, frankly, blew this opportunity because, well, they could be playing this actually in Seattle, having had home field advantage, but they wanted to play like one of the worst teams in baseball for a month and a half. So Tigers did it to themselves. Front office did it to themselves when they were honestly conservative at the trade deadline because Connor McDavid, for example, we don't talk a lot of hockey on here, but they have a very low scale salary cap, I guess you could put it. He signs a 2 year extension to stay with the Oilers, $12.5 million. Meanwhile, the Tigers pay Alex Cobb like $19 million, and he doesn't even Tigers all season. So, very interesting there. I saw that tweet today. I was quite frustrated at it. Wanted to throw my phone, but the only series we have not talked about is the Dodgers and the Phillies, which I thought, the Phillies are one of the few teams that honestly can play chess against the Dodgers pretty successfully, and they tend to. But this has been all Dodgers this series. They've come ready to play. They've taken care of business. It helps that Kyle Schwarber's in a 0 for 20 drought right now, but Bryce Harper has also been playing, frankly, bad. And without those two, the Phillies don't stand a chance, despite how good their pitching staff is.
Well, no, and I think for the Dodgers, I mean, their entire lineup's hitting the ball like crazy right now. And I honestly, I think they really needed that series against the Reds where they just kind of teed off on the Reds. I saw some that the whole pitching staff was tipping their pitches. But nonetheless, I mean, and they put up like 8, 10 runs in both games or something like that. So I think the Dodgers definitely needed that series to just kind of get the bats going, build up a lot of confidence heading into this series. And right now, it's looking like it's going to be Dodgers Brewers. I'm a big fan of the Brewers, kind of like for all those reasons that you were saying. I think the Brewers are a really complete team. I kind of look at them and the Mariners as similar teams. So no matter how this shakes out, I think this is going to make for a fun ALCS and NLCS series for the MLB. I don't want to say it was boring last year, but like how many people were excited over Yankees Dodgers? Like, well, let's be honest. Even if it's the Dodgers this year, I think it would still be fun with the Mariners or really any team that comes out of the AL.
Yeah, and for the Mariners, they've yet to be to a World Series, so that's something to
Yeah.
monitor. The Brewers, one of the few teams with only one or two appearances, so it'll make for fun. The Blue Jays, another one. There's a lot of teams that are kind of newly elite that could be like the David against the Dodgers being Goliath. I think that's a good way to look at it, or the Phillies being Goliath, because those are two teams with the experience. They've been there. They've both won World Series, and I think that's a good way to look at it. For the Dodgers and Phillies, they happen to be playing each other before the NLCS. Ideally, that is the NLCS, and the winner plays in the World Series. So I think for those two teams, they might be approaching it that way. We'll see, but very important the Dodgers don't overlook the Brewers because that is a very good team. I could easily see it being Brewers, Mariners, Brewers, Blue Jays, and those will be three teams that are frankly duking it out for what is rare for them, and that is a World Series. So I like the chaos that has been the MLB playoffs. It's kind of similar to the playoff. It's similar to the parity era of the NBA as well, with all the new salary cap and stuff. A lot of teams that just emerge for 1 or 2 years, they kind of take things over. No more dynastic situations, and it feels like that's the entire state of sports right now. Frankly, outside of maybe what the Eagles are doing in terms of the consistency. They're not necessarily a dynasty though, but we really don't have a single dynastic situation across all four major sports. And I think, well, I shouldn't say that because the Panthers exist in the NHL, so the real Panthers. But outside of that, yeah, it's been basically all parity era across all four sports. I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still to be determined, at least in the NBA, because the Thunder very well could go back to back this year. But and we know how hard it is to go back to back. I mean, teams get injured. It's just kind of the sad reality of it. But the way that the NBA is built now, kind of spreads the talent around, so that that's kind of to be determined. But for the MLB, I have been saying this for months. It feels like the MLB had been wide open this year. Yeah, obviously, Yankees and Dodgers, the two teams that were there last year, have very good chances to get back there. But like I didn't trust the Yankees pitching staff, and kind of the same with the Dodgers. I don't know if I necessarily trust their bullpen either. So both teams have their question marks where it feels like they're beatable. Last year it kind of felt like neither team was beatable. It feels like the exact opposite this year, and now you've got all these new teams involved, and even for the NFL, like yeah, the Eagles they won it all last year. Yeah, you could say that they might be the favorite to win it this year, but I think we all have our question marks about the Eagles as well. I feel like they haven't quite been as dominant. They haven't necessarily shown that they are for sure the favorites this year. So you can maybe see another team make a run in the NFL. But no, I think this is great amongst all sports. I know this was a big argument because a lot of people like the rivalries, and when we talk rivalries and dynasties, we immediately think that Cavs Warriors stint where it was 4 straight years of LeBron and the Cavs versus the Warriors, and then they add Kevin Durant, and it makes the series a little less competitive, but it makes it more entertaining, right? And it's kind of funny because a lot of people I think now miss that in the NBA, but then people hate seeing the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. So it's like you kind of can't really have it one way or another. But yeah, I think it's really great among sports, and honestly, I think it's good because it gives hope to every fan base. Every fan base feels like they have a chance. Like being a Cavs fan, I felt like we had a chance last year. We felt we came up short. I think we got a chance. We got a chance this year, right? Just because of the parity and everything that goes along with it. But do I think that the Cavs should be favorites to win the finals? No, I don't. They got to prove it first. So yeah, overall, I think parity is a great thing.
Yeah, and speaking of the Cavs, fun fact, they were the only second apron team in the NBA this year, so they kind of have to win a title. Therefore,
Yeah,
it would justify the roster construction that they have created. I think after this year, we'll probably see no more Jared Allen or no more Darius Garland on the
I
Cavs.
think we might see no more Donovan Mitchell. He's going to get really expensive. Like I think in 2 years he's going to be worth like 70 million, which he's absolutely worth it. I mean, he's shouldered a ton these last few playoffs. He's been really the only Cav to show up, so he absolutely deserves every penny of that. But I mean, are the Cavs going to be willing to pay that? With the second apron, then they might opt to go for some cheaper guys. Try to get more talent on the roster. But yeah, who knows? So I mean, but this is the Cavs' window is now. Just because of all the contract stuff that you mentioned.
Yeah, and they'll have to decide Mitchell or probably Garland and Allen. Mobley will be there. I don't
For
see
sure.
that changing, so I think that'll be the conversation for the Cavs. Ironically enough, talking about the Cavs, I wanted to just touch on this for 1 second to end it off because we got a wide variety of reaction to LeBron and second decision. Some people wanted to say it was retirement. I thought from the very beginning it gave off ad vibes to me. He had recently just
Hmm.
agreed to some deals with Amazon and Prime Video, but it actually was neither. It was a Hennessy that is him, uh, advertising it. So I wanted to get your thoughts because I know some people are like, oh, he can't go 3 seconds without attention, this, that, and the other. So I wanted to get your thoughts because I thought it was a unique way to do an advertisement.
Yeah, definitely unique, but like it kind of is on brand for LeBron, right? Like he loves this attention. He loves the spotlight. Now, look, I love LeBron. I'm a Cavs fan, born in 2003. LeBron's been playing my entire life. What I watch him do with a lot of those Cavs teams, I will forever have great respect for him. I think he's the greatest basketball player ever. I don't really think it's close necessarily, but yeah, I mean, this is LeBron's whole gimmick, right? He's got to be on the spotlight. He likes the attention, but this whole thing was just dumb. Like, I honestly, at first, I thought maybe it was retirement. With the season coming up just now, with the preseason starting and all of that, certainly felt like a weird time to announce something like that. But then I'm like, why would he tease this just for an ad? The whole thing seemed weird, and then yeah, it just ended up being an ad. I don't know. The whole thing is just weird, but like, it's LeBron. We shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I was gonna say it is very LeBron light.
It's his gimmick. Like, this is what he does. Like he loves the attention.
It would have helped people though if they did their homework because just a couple weeks ago LeBron had an interview, and if it wasn't a couple weeks ago, it was earlier in the later into the summer about the future, where he's sitting with things, and he basically had said like, yeah, I understand retirement's coming, but retirement's not right now. Like he basically insinuated he's playing for sure, probably 2 more years, and it's going to get to the
Hmm.
point maybe he plays when Bryce gets into the NBA, and that would put LeBron at around 45. So, um, he has barely lost a step. Um,
Eh,
I know,
I think it's
I
a little. I think it's a little debatable. I think it's a little
I know there's a
debatable.
Wendell
He,
Carter barely got over the rim. So in terms of
yeah,
the pure athleticism, yes, he's lost a step. But in terms of his basketball skill and ability and the IQ, I don't really think he's lost much there because as he's
yeah.
aged, we've seen him change his game and become a lot more of a post up, face up type of player. He's improved that 3 point shot. Um, it's something players struggle to do as they age, and that's adapt, that's evolve. Carmelo Anthony, for example, when he's basically kind of got blackballed out of the NBA. Yeah, it is what it is. Um, he played the same way, and then he ended up being a bench weapon because that he was kind of like a microwave scorer off the bench. He wasn't able to evolve his game enough
Mm-hmm.
to still be as impactful. So it's
Kind of like how we've seen Russell Westbrook evolve his game. Now he's came off the bench. He's been a viable role player for some teams. We saw it with the Nuggets. So that's just kind of an example of that.
yeah, 100%. And part of that is the always changing salary cap and CBA now. I think that's incentivized teams to uh, play more for the potential than the actual best players in the league. Because I saw a tweet today that actually made a lot of sense on this. Victor Oladipo in the preseason game against the Clippers. While I don't care about the preseason, the point was, yeah, he had like 20 points, like 5 rebounds, 5 steals, 3 assists, and a block. And people were like, yeah, he should be in the league. I mean, while I relatively agree, um, what I've learned about the NBA is it's the best potential that plays, not the best players all the time that play. Because
Mm-hmm.
we're all being honest, Russell Westbrook is he should be on a team. He's not currently, but he should be on a team. He has enough
Yeah.
skill and he impacts the game in enough ways to be on a team. But he's not.
You literally saw that last. You literally saw that last year in the playoffs. Like he literally proved he can be a nice little spark plug off the bench, not necessarily scoring wise, but doing all the hustle plays.
Yeah, so it is a weird time in the NBA. Oladipo also took 19 shots though and had 20 points on 19 shots. So not
No.
um, it it's a preseason game. I don't really care. I just think it's a fascinating point that I think is driven in potentially even the NFL at times where we very much harp potential rather than the actual production, and sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes that does work. So uh, we'll see on that. The whole LeBron thing, I thought it was funny. That's why I wanted to bring it up. I actually thought it was very hilarious because if people did their homework, they would have all known he's not retiring. He wasn't going to make a retirement announcement. I mean, the man just opted into a $53 million player option. So
Yeah.
I don't think that was the case. I do think this will be his last season as a Laker, but I don't think this is going to be his last season playing basketball. Now, where he goes, I'm very fascinated to see because I think it could be the Knicks. I think it could be the Cavs. Um, Maybe he wants to go to the Warriors just for fun, but I think there's a few options out there for him in his post Cleveland, post Laker era, unless he wants to go back to Cleveland. And ironically, this would be one of the best times for him to be on the Cavs in terms of his ability to get to a championship rather than having to carry the load with some of those teams he did in both eras of LeBron and Cleveland.
Well, yeah, and even kind of like what he's doing with the Lakers right now. I had briefly mentioned, it seemed like he lost a step, but I think that's because JJ Redick was playing him the entire second half in every playoff game last year. He just looked so gassed, like against Anthony Edwards. But yeah, no, I think you're definitely right. But the thing with LeBron is, we know he cares about his legacy, so I don't think he would join a new team at this stage in his career. I don't think he wants to add another jersey because the last thing he wants is Celtic Shaq to kind of be thought of. When you're thinking of LeBron's later career. So I really think the Cavs or Heat are really his only two options that he would really be bought in for. And you're right. I think the Cavs do make sense given what happens this year. We know that they didn't blow it up after last year. I'm glad they didn't. They shouldn't have. They're bringing back everybody, but if they fall short again, then the team is very likely going to look a lot different going into next year.
Yeah, and I think the Knicks thing would be cool because the Knicks fans have been kind of balled by LeBron twice. So
Hmm.
I don't know on that one. I know a report came out today. The Knicks are the only team, or were the only team that became a desired destination for Giannis if he were to have gotten traded. So I know some Knicks fans that were very happy that they actually didn't trade for Giannis because in that situation, I think it actually would have made sense for them to because they're the only team that had leverage. They have all the leverage. Giannis only wants to go there. If Giannis really wanted to push forward with a trade, it would have made sense to have it be at that time with the Knicks. And I do think Giannis, his era, his time in Milwaukee will be coming to an end here sooner rather than later. I think we're going to see him in Golden State or New York. I 100% can see that happening. You know, maybe the Thunder say screw it. They put all their eggs in the basket. They trade for Giannis, throw 7 first rounders because they can. They could give him 20 first rounders if they wanted and get, Giannis with Shea. I mean, there's a lot of really creative things that could happen. Giannis could go to San Antonio with Wemby if he wanted. Like, it's a weird time in the NBA where you can kind of just say screw it, 2 players at a time. We might see Jokic get moved because the Nuggets ownership hinted at that last season, where yeah, we don't think we can pay him, we're not going to keep him. It's really outlandish to say actually, but um, we're going to start seeing a lot of players that we think of in a jersey, and we're going to see them in a different jersey because of the way that the salary cap has to be manipulated at times now. The ever lasting and always growing TV deal and the salary cap, it's going to continue to rise. So we'll see. Um, but yeah, the LeBron thing was the LeBron thing. It was what I expected it to be. I'm not really surprised by it. I just thought it was a very humorous thing that there were people on our campus actually, at least I'm still here, who were like, yeah, freaking out all day, all the last day because oh my god, LeBron's retiring. Like, don't get me wrong, I love LeBron, but like, I'm not like 7 years old anymore, 11 years old anymore, rooting for the guy. Like, I have chosen to root for a mediocre basketball team because I know LeBron won't play forever. So I elected to start rooting for a team rather than a
Yeah.
player. The NBA being a players' league, I root for players, of course, but I decided to finally do something I never have in my life and root for an NBA team solely as the team. I'm very disappointed. My choice was the Sacramento Kings. It was down to the Magic, the Kings, and the Pacers. And ironically, the Kings had me in the first half with that first season, the 3 seed. But ever since then, really wish I just elected to be a Magic or Pacers fan. They're basically my Eastern Conference team at this point. But um, yeah, that's what I also like about the NBA is we're getting a lot of these small market teams to contend and compete that typically don't. And that's what this era allows is the smaller markets to contend. And I have an appreciation for that because those teams don't usually get recognized on a lot of major media networks.
Well, yeah, of course, and obviously me being from Cleveland, I also have a special kind of appreciation for that as well. I know Cleveland. It's kind of weird. I think Cleveland is like a small market. I know it is compared to New York, L.A., but Cleveland's I would say it's a decent sized market, and we're very fortunate to have the three major sports teams. But yeah, I think the NBA is kind of headed in the right direction with that. Obviously, they already have the parity down. I mean, what it has been 7 years, 7 different champions. So I mean, they already have the parity side of it down. Now just the kind of teams that are taking over. I would say the NBA has kind of a good model for that.
100%. And, outside of that, I have nothing else. If you happen to have something to say, the floor is yours, but um, you can take it away.
I don't think so. I think my last message is just that take all your money, throw it on the Colts. They're gonna kill Arizona. One of my most confident bets.
Yeah, so honestly valid because later this week we will be giving that Locks of the Week graphic out. We'll have the updated records for ourselves. I think it was another 500 week for me, so that's awesome. But that'll probably post, about Friday before college football truly starts. I know there's a lot of Friday games now, but that'll be around Friday. Um, Next episode, we'll probably recap the ALDS series and the NLDS series, how the MLB playoffs are going, as well as, of course, the big games in college football and the NFL. So, outside of that, I want to thank everybody for listening once again. Another late night episode here. But as always, once we post, like, share, comment, repost, do whatever it is that you need to do. that also helps us. That helps the algorithm. All those things. So we appreciate it. Outside of that, for the people on campus, it is fall break week, so be safe. Don't do anything dumb. For the general population, the same goes. Have a good week of college football. Don't do anything stupid. And hopefully your favorite teams win. So outside of that, I'm Treyvon Hastings with Joey Korzanowski. I want to thank you again for listening to Beyond the Box Score. But outside of that, it's a wrap. Have a good one, everybody.